So for those who are online, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. So yeah, so you have points. Yes. All right, it's 10 that time and we want to kick it off. So welcome to our November Rise seminar. And today we have Federico Romani and Elena Ramella Levis. So Federico Romani is the principal investigator of the Northern Tanzania Secretarybird project. He's a PhD student at the University of Pavia, that how you pronounce it. Italy, and an anthropologist. And then since 2018, he deals with vocal communication, sensors, nest surveys, and habitat selection of water birds and large raptors. His scientific focus is animal behavior, and in particular, how birds change their habitats in relation to different environmental conditions or potential threats. And Elena Ramella Levis is the co-PI of the same project. She is an evolution biologist and the president of the Africa Conservation Projects. Her research interests lie in the field of conservation biology and especially in application of scientific methodologies for implementation of effective management plans to prevent the extinction of threatened species. She is also involved in studies regarding population genomics of birds and reptiles. So we are so grateful to have you here. Federico and Elena started working at Ikorongo in Kumeti this year, and we have started discussing about how we can collaborate with Kumeti Fund, but within the Serengeti Ecosystem also they started working since 2023. So the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Giorgio. So, good morning, everyone. I would really like to thank the Secretarybird Fund for having organized this seminar about the Secretarybird. So, thank you, George, for having introduced us. What can I say? The Africa Conservation Project, like George was saying before, is an Italian non-profit organization that promotes the conservation of animal biodiversity in Europe and Africa. We believe that research is the first step towards biodiversity conservation, and for these reasons, our project focus and aim to acquire the basic information on demography, ecology, and genetics of endangered species that are necessary for the development of effective wildlife management plans. So we focus on birds and especially on threatened species, species that play an important role in the balance of ecosystem and taxonomically isolated species.
Go next, like the other side.
Yeah. Okay. So why the Secretarybird? Since 2020, it is classified as endangered in the IUCN Red List of threatened species, and the global population is decreasing. But to date, the estimates of the number of featured individuals are still very precise and are believed to range between 6,700 and 67,000 birds. So, as you can see, an up-to-date continent-wide population estimate is highly needed. In addition, the Secretarybird is also listed among the species of CITES Appendix 2. Then, the Secretarybird provides important ecosystem services, controlling the population growth of agricultural pests such as locusts and rodents, and its presence could be also an important indicator of grassland health. Then it is a taxonomically isolated species, although it is a member of the order Accipitiformes, which includes also auks, eagles, vultures, and harriers. It is the sole extant member of the Sagittariidae family. So the Secretarybird not only meets the three requirements that our organization is interested in, but it has been scarcely researched, especially in East Africa. Most of the knowledge about the Secretarybird ecology is indeed limited to studies conducted in South Africa, while in Tanzania, apart from general special information, fundamental data regarding its biology were still missing. In addition, no population genetic studies in all the continents have been conducted, and which is why we started collecting samples in Tanzania, and the same are doing our colleagues in South Africa, to begin defining the population structure of the species and identifying the main management units. We hope to add samples from Kenya as well in the future, and ideally from every country where the species is widespread. Well-known threats are habitat loss due to urbanization, bush encroachment, and transformation in agricultural land. Then also collisions with energy infrastructures, especially in South Africa, and roadkills. Direct persecution for traditional medicine and cultural beliefs are excessive burning of grassland and diseases are other further threats which we will address when we talk about our topics. The Secretarybird, scientific name Sagittarius serpentarius, is a diurnal bird of prey widespread in savannas and grasslands of sub-Saharan Africa. It mainly leads a terrestrial life, spending most of the day hunting on the ground, often in pairs. In fact, like many other large raptors, it is monogamous, and when single individuals are spotted, are probably immature birds, so dispersing young secondary birds, or partners alternating in the incubation of parental care. Adults weigh between 3.5 and 4 kg and have a tarsus that is 30 centimeters long, making them taller than any other bird of prey, about 1.2, 1.3 meters. They are famous for the long eyelashes and the crown of neck feathers that can be held upright on the head or flattened along the neck. From our monitoring data, males appear to have a bright orange coloration of the facial mask, while the females tend to be carmine red. As you can see on this photo, here we have a male, and here is the female, and also here we have the male that is very orange, and the female is reddish. While on the other hand, the juveniles have a yellow ochre coloration of the face mask. Yes, exactly. Grayish plumage and visibly longer neck feathers. With respect to the adults on top right, they have the white beak and also very white plumage, especially in the Serengeti ecosystem. Despite its terrestrial habit, from the data of our satellite transmitters, secretary birds can perform a good soaring flight, taking advantage of thermals to reach an altitude more than 3,000 meters, covering also long distances. While walking through the savanna grassland, secretary birds hunt their prey by digging powerful and rapid peaks that can reach upwards up to 5 times their body weight. The diet consists of reptiles, especially snakes, skinks, and lizards, amphibians, small mammals like mice, voles, hares, and monkeys, insects, especially grasshoppers, and terriculous birds. Although they are generally silent, they can emit deep guttural croaking sounds, especially to maintain the contact between partners and in the presence of threats, like, for example, other secretary birds or other raptors. Yes. Yes. Sometimes they really remind to listen the lions. Yeah. So in the Serengeti ecosystem, the secretary bird mainly nests on Balanites egyptiaca and umbrella thorn acacias or other thorny acacias not too tall, between 3 and 8 meters, with a compact canopy shape, flat and on top, that allow them to build a big platform on top made of grass and twigs of various size. The nests are adorned with pellets. You can see in the top right picture, the pellets that are mainly consisting of grass and chitinous remains of insects. So, Northern Tanzania Secretary Bird Project is a multi-year project with the main aim of developing a secretary bird action plan in Tanzania, and to reach this goal, this research is filling knowledge gaps on the ecology, demography, and genetics of the species, and assessing the effectiveness of different conservation action in 3 main study areas: the Tanzanian side of the Serengeti ecosystem, Serengeti ecosystem, and the Romani National Park. We chose to start working from the north of the country because it's where the species is most widespread. The project started in January 2023 and is long-term because the study area is large and more years of monitoring are needed to understand the population growth over time and to identify the environmental and anthropogenic factors which determine their growth or decline. Serengeti ecosystem is now our primary study area for 2 main reasons. It is an extensive protected area which should be subject to less human pressure, and given the large grassland coverage, the availability of enough trophic resources, and the potential suitable environmental condition, this ecosystem would represent one of the last strongholds in East Africa still supporting a source population of secretary birds, our starting hypothesis. Specific goals are to identify the highest density areas and investigate the environmental factors which drive the abundance of the species, estimate the secretary bird productivity and nesting success, understand the dispersal pattern of youngs in areas under different management regimes, and their recruitment into the breeding population, define the conservation units and the most important reservoir of genetic diversity in case of translocations, and genomic data will be used also to detect inbreeding and evaluate the presence of deleterious mutations carried by each bird. Finally, raising awareness of local communities, tourists, and stakeholders. In January 2023, we began monitoring the population in Serengeti National Park. We used the tessellation stratified sampling design and the multiple covariate distance sampling model to estimate the secretary bird abundance and density. A grid of 66 square cells was superimposed on the Serengeti National Park, resulting in 66 transects of about 15 kilometers. We discarded all the cells falling in very remote areas due to the lack of growth, and those in rice-intensive protection zones where even researchers are not allowed to enter. In this way, we traveled 52 transects and surveyed about 80% of the park. To stratify abundance and density, the Serengeti National Park was divided into 4 main sectors: north, center, south, and west. And all transects were repeated 3 times outside the breeding season to increase detectability. And the 12 transects with the highest number of observations were repeated from 4 to 8 times to estimate the density also in the areas most frequented by the species that are colored on the map that we defined as highest density areas. Then the number of individuals counted during the transit was used to model the secretary bird habitat selection. Generalized additive mixed models were used to understand the environmental factors driving the species abundance, while we use generalized linear models to detect differences in habitat selection between pairs and single individuals. After finding the first 2 breeding pairs in the second half of February 2023, we began an exploratory nest search and monitoring activity in the highest density areas to understand when effectively the breeding season took place, the behavior of the pairs during parental care, chicks' survival, and potential and threats. So, due also to the lack of information on how secretary bird reacted to human presence in this ecosystem, we tested various methodologies in order to plan a specific sampling, specific nest monitoring design in 2024. For example, we deployed camera traps outside nest at different distances. We checked the development stage of nestlings every 2-3 weeks with an action camera attached to a telescopic pole, as you can see in the picture. And we monitored directly each nest about once a month using the digiscoping technique. So, Federico will talk about the activities in 2024 and, and our results.
Okay, guys. So, in 2024, we started, as the previous years, with the idea in January to start to monitoring the census of population to repeat what we did in the previous year, because clearly one of the objectives, as you can saw before, is to understand the trend of population during the year. So what we can do, we started with the same methodology with the same time. But the Secretarybird joked us, what happened? The last year, the breeding season, as in 2023, started between the end of February and proceed until June. And in 2024, when we arrived in Serengeti to start to conduct the transit as Elena showed before, we saw that the Secretarybird, they already started to breed. And they breed with 2 months, a shift of 2 months before of what happened in 2023. This is why. Then we will see why. But now it is not important. We will see after. And what we do? So we change our sampling design because our sampling design monitoring, because we choose to start to estimate not only the population size of the Secretarybird in the Serengeti ecosystem, and clearly we start from Serengeti National Park for many reasons that then explain to you. But we started to understand also the nest abundance and the detectability of the nest, because these 2 aspects is important. Nest abundance is very important because you can check if the result of the number of population is similar from what we find, for example, with the nest. And if it's similar, it's all okay. If there is something that don't match, this is things needed to think about this. So for the nest abundance, for searching the nest, and so to understand the detectability and nest abundance, detectability also is very important. Detectability is the probability to see an animal. For example, if I know that the Secretarybird during the warmest time of the day, they soaring or they are flat on the grass, because they do, because it's a behavior of a Secretarybird, and you go at 1 p.m. to check Secretarybird, you don't see nothing. So, okay, there is no Secretarybird. It's not true. Secretarybird, there is. So detectability is very important. So what do we do for nest? We build another breed. We use the same methods of the other time of the census. So always the tessellation stratified sampling design and the multi-covariate distance sampling model. And but the grid is smaller than the other before. Is a 6 per 6 kilometers, so 36 square kilometer. And what we do, we cannot start at the beginning taking all the area of before, because as you know, when you conduct the research, the funds are limited. So what we can do, we must choose an area and optimize the sampling effort, so to have more information as possible, but at the same time a lot of information. So we must optimize this concept. So what we do? What we did? We choose the central and the southern, especially the central and the southern area, the central and the southern sector, because as we can see, the next slide, or two slides after, this is the highest density area for Secretarybird in the Serengeti ecosystem, in the Serengeti National Park. But we think also in the Serengeti ecosystem, and then we will see why. And so inside each cell, like before, for monitoring the population size, we draw a transit, and we repeated this transit during the breeding season that started in November, and this we know because clearly we find the first nest in January, but the chick was small, so because the Secretarybird eggs hatch in after 42, 45 days, and the chicks fledge after 13 weeks after the hatching. So clearly with the GoPro, with camera trap and other things, we understand the age of the chicks very, very easy. And then this time we didn't stratify for the sector, because why we stratify for the sector before? We stratify for the sector because Stratify means that you divide your study area with subsample because your subsample are of your particular interest. Why we divided before in 4 sectors? Because when we produced a density map and we give it to local authorities, for local authorities, it's very easy to see, okay, here there are a lot of secretary bird, here there are a good number of secretary bird, here few, and here few. So it's more easy for them to understand how is the distribution of the density. In this case, we are interested in another aspect that we will see after, and we stratify for 3 levels of coverage of open woodland, because this aspect is very important for the nesting, for choose the nesting site for secretary bird. Then, okay, this is the number of cell and other. Okay, then what do we do when we find the nest? Clearly, there is the second step, the monitoring of the nest. And the monitoring on the nest, we did the same things of the previous year. So with the telescopic pole, with the action camera, with the camera traps outside the nest. But in addition, this year we start to put camera trap inside the nest. Because clearly, this Elena that is placing the camera trap inside the nest, because clearly here you see the camera trap, these 2 chicks, because clear sometimes you cannot understand what happened at the nest. For example, disappear a nest, oh, what's happened? I have the camera traps outside, but you cannot understand clearly. So the best way, at the end, the best way to monitoring the nest is to put camera trap inside the nest. So, direct monitoring, then, as George told you before, we started the first exploration also in Ikorongo Grumeti Game Reserve Complex, because our intention in 2025 is to start also sampling design, is enlarge our sampling monitoring also in these 2 protected areas. And then we started also the first monitoring program also in Tarangire National Park, where we found 4 nests, then for Serengeti. Okay. Okay, other activity, we capture 25 juvenile of secretary bird, we target them with GPS transmitter, with the GPS and with the satellite trackers, 5 of these. And then we also take, we banded with the colored rings, juveniles of secretary bird. There is a different combination of color that on the right leg is the combination is unique for each individuals. On the left legs, we have the combination of the country and of the population. Above and south, there is, for example, for Serengeti, above and south is red, and the middle, the color of population that we choose, that is red for Serengeti, for Tarangire is brown. So in this way, we can follow or we can use also the information of tourists, of other people, to understand that this is a good thing, for example, when you involve people in citizen science program, to involve people and to have data without follow the animal, because clearly GPS tracker are very expensive in comparison with the rings. So in this way, we can do a little bit. And then we take some biometrical measure. I think that is the next slide. Yes. Then we take biometrical measure for biometric measurements for the birds. For example, we measure the tarsus, the beak, without cere, with leg, weight, and things. And then we start to collect biological sample. In our case, the biological sample is blood spot of. Yes, drop of blood, yes. And feeders and the quill of feeders stored in ethanol with the high berry percentage, 90%. Okay, 99%. This is our colleagues of South Africa, Melissa and Wesley. that are doing the same work of collecting the sample. So to put together to have an idea of genetic structure of the Secretarybird. And okay, and this is the work when we capture the bird. So, no, wait. Now I ask you a question. Oh,
No problem. Find yes, here.
How many is shared? Is it shared on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
how many Secretarybird in Serengeti National Park for you? How many?
300.
100?
350.
Another number?
500.
Okay. No, fortunately, more.
Oh,
More, fortunately. 1,500 birds. Okay,
So our starting hypothesis.
so our starting hypothesis is quite good. Okay, this is the map of density where these Secretarybird are widespread mostly. In general, in central and southern Serengeti National Park. Clearly, this is the division that you see, the sector that you see before is our, I can say, is an arbitrary division that we do, that we did, because it's more easy for people to read like this. But it's not totally true that it's an arbitrary division, because as you can know, for sure, the Serengeti National Park and the Serengeti Ecosystem follow some gradients related to precipitation, to soil, and to other factors, elevation. So, for example, rain increase from here to here, for example, or in this area there are in the western is full of hills and the slope are different in comparison with this here. But what is very interesting that where they stay the Secretarybird more? Here, not the place, around the Serengeti plains. This is the very particular things. For example, we believe that when we saw grassland, big grassland, okay, for sure there is Secretarybird. Need. Yes or no? But in the area, and then we will see, in some specific area with some characteristics that are, especially that are widespread around, all around the Serengeti plain, we have a very high density of Secretarybird, almost 3 per 10 square kilometers. A lot of Secretarybird, a lot. So this is a very good thing, clear. Here, few, but it's not so much few, because at the end, we have about 1 Secretarybird every 10 square kilometer. So it's not bad. It's a good number. So this is what is the general situation. This is the strata, the famous strata, center, north, south, west. There is the value of estimate. This is the number of individuals. This is the density for, then there is other parameter. I don't know, we put the detection function. I don't know if someone of you has experience in distance sampling, but for example, in distance sampling, a good measure, a good matrix to see that the model works well and is quite precise is this parameter, the coefficient of variation. For example, when we have a coefficient of variation minus than 0.2, means that the model is quite reliable. Is
less than.
Yes, to less than, sorry, less than. So when we can see the total is 0.14, so it's a very good coefficient of variation. So the model works, and also the good of fitness is good, and other things I don't want to enter in particular here. This is the detection function, also the distribution of the distance Because when we use distance sampling, if you have the distribution of the distance, that, for example, is the opposite of this, like this, there is something that does not work, because in this way you can underestimate the number of individuals. Because your function go far with the distance, but here you don't see individual and you see all here. So there is something that not work. When your distribution is like this, because the perfect detection function is like this, it's like a sigmoid, so means that your data are good. For distance sampling are good. So this is okay. This is only for the highest density area. You see in the highest density area, so in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, in 12 cells, we have almost the half of the total number of secretary bird in the Serengeti National Park. Not in all Serengeti National Park, in the 80% of the Serengeti National Park, because this area, we not survey this area. So we cannot estimate, because we not survey, so we cannot do inference about this. So in the 80% of this area, in the orange and yellow, we have almost half of the number of the total number of secretary bird in Serengeti National Park. So this is the result of habitat selection. So we can see now we put this map because it's more easy to understand. This is a simplified map, is a corridor land cover, but simplified for 4 main vegetation type. So this is produced by Frankfurt Zoological Societies in their website, Serengeti GIS and data. So it's available, this layer is available on internet and everyone can download it. This is the 4 main vegetation type, and what we can see from what I said before, that the highest density area here is all around. These hotspots are in the transition zone between large expanses of grassland and the more heterogeneous habitat, characterized, for example, by woodland, trees, shrubland, and other. But they love to stay here. Here a little bit. Here also, here also. So we see this environmental factor, close grassland, so grassland with high vegetation cover, not with a low vegetation cover. So full grassland, I don't know, with high vegetation cover. So why? Now we try to understand why close grassland, probably because clearly we can hypothesize, because we must try to give a biological sense to our result, but this is always so. Why? Probably close grassland offer a more possibility of food for them, especially of grasshopper, because secretary bird eat a lot of grasshopper. So it would be an explanation. For example, this we saw at the end. Open grassed woodland, the best is between 0 and 20%. After 20%, the effect of open woodland started to decrease. Open woodland is tree canopy cover between 20 and 50%. So open grassland is a grassland with a low vegetation cover that are typical of this area of Serengeti, because it's the driest area of Serengeti National Park, and then clearly on Ngorongoro, because the gradient of rain is like this, the gradient of rain. So this area often is characterized by open grassland, where the vegetation cover is lower, and here the abundance decreases. Like, for example, in some plain in the west, in some grassland of the west, we have a good present, especially here in this area, this grassland, we have a good present of open grassland, and here the abundance decrease. Other factor, for example, is close tree grassland. That when close tree grassland is when you have canopy cover is like similar to this, when this environment and large increase, we have a drop of the abundance of secretary bird. Non-permanent rivers. Why non-permanent rivers? Because where there is a permanent river, sometimes the environment is a little bit wet. So the vegetation is probably often is characterized, for example, from dense forest, as you can see on the Romani River. Around Romani River, there are dense forests. Okay, so in this habitat are not suitable for them. But for example, non-permanent river, why is important? Non-permanent river that is where there is water during the rainy season, because during the rainy season, secretary bird breeds, and secretary bird bring a lot of water to their chicks. This secretary bird is also famous because the parents continues to bring water. They drink a lot. So when they have seasonal rivers, so create also what's it? Dams, for example. So are all aspects that are interested. Poi mean rainfall, they prefer between 600 millimeter to 900 millimeter. When the precipitation grow, they don't like so much. So where the precipitation grow, especially in the north and the north and west. Okay, because there is the influence of Lake Victoria. Okay. In fact, this habitat, as you can see, because I put this map, this area are more characterized by wooded area and heterogeneous area with a lot of wood together with patches, small patches of grassland. So it's not homogeneous, it's heterogeneous, more heterogeneous. And then slope and then time interval. I forgot before, sorry, a little bit. This is the covariance time interval. When you see more easily secretary bird, also in this model, but also in this other model. The best moment to see secretary bird seem to be early in the morning and late in the afternoon. The worst moment seem to be in the hottest hour of the day. This is why, for what I explained to you before, because secretary bird during this time fly. They spend most of the day on the ground, but during the hottest hour, they fly. Or they flat in the grass, and if you have a secretary bird on 10 meters, you don't see. For sure, because they totally flat in the grass, you don't see nothing. You pass, you check well, there is nothing, and you go. So you don't count the birds. So what this means? That you underestimate the real number of the birds. So, okay, here secretary bird is decreasing a lot. They disappear. So they are dying everywhere. No, what time you go? I go at 1 p.m. Try to go in another hour and check. Because this is very important, because when you give your result to authorities and you give a biased result, this could be a problem, because you can tell things that are not totally true. So, okay, this is comparison between single individuals and pairs. For example, single individual prefer more heterogeneous habitat. This is speaking about what I just said. For example, the probability to spot pairs compared to single individuals is greater in the third time interval, that is between 12 and 15. So what this means? Not it means that it means that when you spot a secretary bird, you spot a pairs and you don't spot a single. So the pairs you can spot because when they are pairs, one is flat, the other is stand up. Okay, so secretary bird. Then check well. You go near and you see that there is another individual. So the probability is higher. When there is one single individual that stay flat, you don't see. In the other time interval, so in the morning in the second phase of the morning and late in the afternoon, the probability is the same. So when you see a secretary bird, you can see without problem a single individual and a pairs. So when you search for secretary bird, you search not in the hottest hour of the day. This is a recommendation also for other research team that want to check, for example, for abundance index. So the next, what we found in 23 and 24. This is the number of nests in 23, and this is the number in 24. You see the difference. Not only they start before to breed, but they breed more. The difference. And this is the number that we found in the months. Between February and March, we found 12 nests. Between April and June, nest, not that we found. This is referring when they lay, yeah? Is referring to when they lay, not where we found. And this is the number 48 started, they lay between November and February, and 15 between March and June. This is all the nests that we found in the 2 years. So we found also one in the border between Grumeti and Serengeti, 3 in the north. But you see here how many. It's true that we searched here. This is true because these we found occasionally, not following a specific sampling design. But the number is very high because it's 83 nests in 2 years, considering also the 4 that we found in Tarangire National Park. But 4 is small, so we leave the 4 of Tarangire 79 nests. So this is a good number. And when we found this nest, this is the density map because we calculate the density of nests. You can see when the nests are all on the border between woodland and big grassland, the major part of nests. See? And as you can see, there are some areas that are full of nests, some area no. And the density that we estimate, and this is another interesting thing, is the total is 5,000 square kilometers, okay, for this area. Before is 136, the estimate. Before we saw the density of the secretary-bird population in the central and southern Serengeti, that is about 600, not 600, more than 600 individuals, about more than 900 individuals in the central and southern Serengeti. So there is something of strange. Why all that individuals in the we found as population? Okay, there is also immature birds, there is also single and blah blah blah, but there is also pairs. So the cluster size is about, that we found is about 1.5. So on 900 individuals, so means that we have 300 pairs, so 600 individuals, but clustered in 300 pairs. So why this short number? I expect to find more nests. The reason, we have 3 explanations for the moment. The first one, our sampling design, our model is taka. And so, but sincerely, I don't think, also because also here the coefficient of variation is not bad, 0.21, so it's not bad. The other things, before Elena told that we collected the data about from sample data about feeders and other things, and we sexed the bird. On 25 birds, how many males and how many females? Sex ratio in large birds of prey is respect to 1 to 1.
Because they are monogamous.
They are monogamous, are girato. how many females and how many males. For one female, 3 males.
This is the population, the effective population size of one.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is an explanation. What the individuals that we saw are not pairs. They are fewer. The pairs, the real pairs are fewer. Because if this is the sex ratio, there is something of strange. This is one reason. Second reason, the third reason, one is our model is not good. The third reason is about the sociality of this bird. Secretary birds are very social, especially when they are immature. So sometimes you see a pair of immature individuals that the plumage is very similar and the beak to adults, and you think, okay, it's a male and females. No, probably are 2 males that are walking and stay together. It's very common for secretary bird. The sibling stay a lot of time together before to leave the natal area. So, and you see, okay, so the pairs, so I check for a nest, and you never see a nest where you saw the pair. Why? Probably are not a real pair. So this can explain. This is what we saw for detectability. It's more easy to see the nest, to find the nest when they have chicks. Why? Because when they have chicks, secretary bird stand up on the tree, on the top of the tree, because under they have the chicks, they stay up and cover and make them shadow. Okay? And when they have eggs, they stay flat and you don't see nothing, or it's very difficult to see them. So this is the situation. And this is very nice things because it's match with the results of before. Why match? Because the area with the nest, with the more nest, are the same area with the highest density. And you see this case of the grassland, only grassland. You see that the nests are clustered in some specific point. Some specific point where there is small patches of woodland. On here is the area of gold copies, where there is the copy, around there is trees. And so another things, one of the last things, that in Serengeti, trees are a very important resources, especially in this area, because as you know, here you have a lack of trees for 400 of square kilometers. You see one tree, then you see a tree after 10 kilometers, and trees are a very important resource, because secretary bird share the trees and roost with another larger raptor that is huger and stronger than secretary bird, the lappet-faced vulture. We had some nest that the last year nest lappet-faced vulture. This year nest in the same tree, secretary bird. So sometimes what's happened that when they have very few trees became a resource, because if secretary bird want to breed on a tree and they found lappet-face, they don't reach to chase away lappet-face, especially these for young pairs, because probably they have not, they still not have experience on fight and other things, like it's normal. So this is another important thing to take into account. So finally, this is the mortality. As things, this is the mortality. You see, the mortality is high, especially from hatching to the first months. During 2023, we have a survival of 37.5%. So very low. This year is quite good, but slow. We lost the half of the nest. Here the survival increase from after the first month until fledging increase. And we can see also the difference between, for example, in 2023, okay, the chick survival was higher in the first month. It's lower here, but it's higher here. So there are a lot of things to think. When you work with the ecology of a species, there are a lot of things to take into account. But what we can see at the end is the productivity. How many birds per pairs per breeding attempt? Half a chick for every breeding attempt. That means that appears to have almost 2 chicks. If they breed every year, a 4 year. If they don't breed every year, or breed 1 year, yes, 1 year, no, 8 years to have 2 chicks into the breeding population. And here is only not into the breeding population. This is when fledged. Then there is the mortality after fledging. So the mortality is very high of this bird. So cases of mortality, and I think that we can conclude with the cases of mortality. For illegal harvesting, 3 elephants that destroy the tree. The really predator Secretarybird, on a budget. This is the first times that is reported. It's never reported. On a budget, eat the chicks of Secretarybird, climb the tree and eat the chicks.
The skin is very.
It's terrible. He passed through the tops of the trees, go and eat the chick. And we have a case that they chase away also the parents. Chase away the parents and kill the chicks. On a budget elephant, another things never reported. The first cases of myiasis, it's right, in Secretarybird. Myiasis, and tell you, Elena.
Yes, it's a disease, it's a parasitic disease that happens when maggots of flies start to eat the alive animal. So it's quite incredible. And it's very common for cattle, but for birds it's not so common. It has been reported for flamingos in Asia. And we had some cases, the first 2 in March, they were near Ndutu, near Lake Ndutu, 2 birds of the same nest died one together. They started not to eat anymore because they were very weak, and then they died. We found the holes of these maggots, but we couldn't understand that it's really well. Then we found other 2 with the same problem that were still alive. So what we did, we called some vets also here in Tanzania. They told us this is myiasis. There is a particular medication that you can treat them, but the problem is that it's very strong, and you must be very careful with the dosage. So we decided not to treat them, also because to treat an animal in the wild you must have a special permission, ethics permissions. So what we did, we simply cleaned the wounds, we removed as many maggots as possible, and we disinfected them, and fine.
They reach to fledge.
Yes. Yeah.
They reach to fledge. So this is a good. And then the last things that it was present also in the model is fires. From our model, seem that the excessive use of fires can create a problem to Secretarybird, because we have a decrease in abundance when the area are burned a lot. Burn a lot means that from more than 60%. And indeed, also from our empirical data, from our observation, when the area is burned, and from one side you have, especially when the burning are later, that happen is that remain nothing of grass, nothing remain, and you have near a patch with grassland, the Secretarybird will find the patch with grassland, clear, because here they don't find food. It's easy. And when they have, especially the chicks, this is a problem, because when they have the chicks, there is a two kind of problem. The balance between cost and benefits disappear because they, to find food, they come very far, more far. So when they go more far, the chicks are exposed to danger, to predation. This is one. The second one, different to baby mammals, the chicks cannot move. If for 2 days you burn 100 of kilometers, they breathe all the smoke all the day. You can consider the small lungs of these chicks, the effect of some gases, like for example CO, that is normal in fires. They breathe all the day because they cannot move, they die. We have only one case, but we have. So this is not a problem burning. Is problem is when burning and how much. This is the question. This is a things that we are trying to cooperate more, for example, with the Tanapa, to try the right moment, or if we found the nest, please burn the patch without nest. So I think that we need more cooperation with them about this, because could be a problem. And so I think that the major things there are, our 3 years, and we finish. We target with GPS five Secretarybird. 2 died suddenly after pledging. One after 12 days of pledging, and another one the same day that pledged. Probably they are predated because the predator destroy also the GPS. We try to find.
Yes, we found the one predator in one case. The bird that pledged the same day a hyena passed under the nest, and because sometimes we notice that pledged Secretarybirds are not so experienced in coming back to the nest. They need 2-3 days to start coming back and flying on the nest. So in that case, the bird was. It was very windy day. There was a storm, so also a bad moment to pledge, probably. And the hyena caught the chicks, the juvenile. So yes, and this is also their movement. There is variability also in the patterns and the movement patterns between.
They are females.
Yes,
because
also the other 2 were males.
Were males. We didn't know that. 5 on 5 that we put GPS is male because there is this imbalance between females and males. As you can see, for the moment, they never exit from Serengeti Ecosystem.
So this one, for example, was born in the Coma area. Then after 2 months, he moved in Loliondo. He stayed about 1 month in Loliondo. Then he spent some time here near Volcopis and a lot of time near the main road, which is not so good.
Yes, every time I have my please don't die.
Yes, because it's reported of
Yes.
killing on the main road of Serengeti. Then sometimes he go into the west. He stays near Moru, near Lake Magadi. Then he come back following the same route. One time we went also here and come back, but now actually is near the main road. So maybe if you pass with the car, you can.
Yeah, you can see.
Yeah.
The slides have stopped.
The sharing has stopped
Yeah.
over the internet.
Because here it says that I am sharing. It's okay? Okay. So this is a model. This is, was born in Gold Copy area, and he stays very near to the natal area. And just now he moved a little bit more. He went very near to Lake Natron, and then and now it's in this area. It's
nearby Olcarian.
Yes.
Yes, in Gorongoro.
Ngorongoro. Yeah, so Ngorongoro seems to be a very important area for dispersion of young birds. While the last one, he was born in Amiri Plains area, so always in the east.
It's the last one that we fit the GPS, so it's the youngest of the other.
So it started to move a little bit from here was the nest, so about 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
And now probably is in an area with no GSM because we are not receiving signal from a few days. So we are a little bit concerned about this, but we hope it's fine. We will go to check in the following days the area. See if,
Okay, these things I already done during the presentation. So, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for such a nice presentation. For our online participants, you can write your question, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question, and you can just moderate, Elena.
Yeah.
Then those who are here, please just raise your hand and ask the question.
I have a question. I have a few, but I'll start with just one. I'm curious, did I miss you perhaps mentioning how these population densities compare to other areas on the continent?
Yes, exactly. The unique density estimate for the moment are in South Africa. Is exit a new paper just 2 months ago, not connected to Melissa or Wesley, I think no. That they estimate about 8,000 individuals in all South Africa, Lesotho, and the other small country, South Africa, Lesotho, and I don't remember now, but 8,000 individuals in all the country. Then in South Africa, there is another estimate in the past in all the that area before that I is pronounceable for me. No, the article of Tarbovan.
Yeah, the Transvaal.
Transvaal, okay. They estimate about 1,500 pairs, but in an area very, very, very huge.
Yeah, the sampling design was quite different from ours, so the comparison couldn't be couldn't be the same because they estimate the density by counting the nest.
Yes, in Tarboton and other. But what we can see, because that the other data we have is the encounter rate, because we have the encounter rate clearly, but also other group in Kenya, in Botswana have the encounter rate of Secretarybird in protected areas. Our is 10 times more than the others.
Okay.
So the Secretarybird, the Serengeti ecosystem probably, and I'm not afraid to tell this, is the place in the world with the highest density, or with the highest density of Secretarybird in all the continent, because Secretarybird is widespread in Sub-Saharan Africa. So this is a very good thing, but it is also a bigger responsibility.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So remind me, the IUCN, that wide population range estimate, the high end of that was 6,700 or 60,000? I don't remember.
Yeah, what was between 6,700 and 67,000.
Okay.
So it's very large.
Yes, yes, and also IUCN recommended to conduct an up-to-date population estimate continent-wide, but
Yeah.
it's not so easy because it requires a lot of money.
In those other studies, do they also report a skewed sex ratio, or is this unique to this system?
Sorry, you can.
Those other studies, did they also report that highly skewed sex ratio, or is that unique to
No,
this system?
I don't know this, the skewed sex ratio.
Okay.
It's not reported.
No, it's not reported. Yes, it's not reported. Yes.
This is very interesting. We'll have a meeting next week with our South African colleagues and
And ask to them.
we try to ask this.
That's very
But for them is the same, or they for sure have the sex ratio because they collect data. They have, but we are very curious to understand how now we have 1.1 and here we have 1 by 3. Yeah.
We have a question. Sorry, you.
No, you're good.
Yeah, okay. We have a question from Fleur.
Okay.
And she asked, you can read she asked if the density in Serengeti National Park is only influenced by environmental factors or if there are other factors.
Yeah, for sure.
A very good question. Thank
For
you.
sure. Thank you so much. Yes, for sure. When I start from a little bit far, when we make a model, when we model the habitat, a model is a very simplification of the reality. The reality is very more and more complex than a model. You can have a model perfect with a very high Auchi, your cross validation is perfect, you test your test data and training data is all perfect, and a lot of blah, blah, blah of statistical things that go very good. But at the end, for example, you go to check a place, okay, my model tells that this place is full of Secretarybird. I go, I don't find nothing.
90%.
Yes, exactly. For example, there is a good example of my colleagues in Italy that told me, some people are doing a very good model on the distribution of the killer whale in the European Sea. They saw that the best environment is the Mediterranean Sea. In the Mediterranean Sea, there is no one.
Yes.
No one. So, and the model was perfect, also in a good, very good peer review journal. So, what means when we model with what we know as fundamental or potential niche. So, ecological characteristic of the environment, but lack two very important things. Really three very important things. One is biotic interaction. And biotic interaction, anthropogenic pressure is a biotic interaction. We don't consider this, but this is very important. Another thing that we don't consider is the movement of the animal. The movement is very important. Another thing that I would like to add is the age. Habitat selection is not the same for many species, is not the same for adults and juveniles. It's totally different. So should be better to make this model by separating per age. And this is very good things because, for example, for collecting this type of data, we need a lot of time because, for example, one thing that we can collect is the use of camera trap inside the nest. Okay, you can collect it because you can collect the data of diet because we saw that, for example, in some nests the chicks are were grown only
By one parent.
yes, and only to locusts. In another nest, in another area with a lot of reptiles. We have a nest that the parents bring mouse and wolves a lot of time.
50% of the diet is made of mice. In another nest made of reptiles, in another nest made of grasshoppers. Such a difference.
Such a different
That can be used also for the parent experience, or differentiation between areas.
So this is for sure, I think that is a very good question and is the things that is very included, but we have to work about this. And then anthropogenetic pressure, clear. In Serengeti, we assume that anthropogenic pressure are small. But when we exit from Serengeti, and sometimes we saw very suitable area, we don't see one secretary bird because the pressure outside is very strong. In the western, outside the Serengeti ecosystem, in the western area, secretary bird are used a lot in traditional medicine, especially the juveniles. Seem that they use the brain of juveniles.
Local healers reported these to the guys of Nature Tanzania, and it seems they are used to increase the general activity of lazy people. Si vuole calò.
Because they work.
Oh, dear Lord.
Very good. Then we have other questions.
Wapika tubatini lakini.
Kelvin, what we are doing to ensure conservation of these species across the border. Okay. Yes, we started to cooperate with the guys, especially working in the Masai Mara and cooperating with the
Birds of Prey Trust.
Yes, Kenya Bird of Prey Trust. They are especially working on martial eagles, but they are also monitoring all the raptors and also secretary bird. And we should start to coordinate with them from next year to monitor also, because it's clear some of our birds maybe can move in the map, especially those that are born in Lobo, so towards the north, maybe they can move. And another interesting point of contact between Tanzania and Kenya is the Komazi National Park, which is connected to the Tsavo ecosystem in Kenya. So this is another area that is included in this project that we want to start monitoring, because we planned to start this year, we didn't manage, we do next year, but to collect samples, but also to understand how many there are in Komazi, and if they go from there to Amboseli.
Yes, for sure.
Because in Amboseli there are many secretary birds. And also it's in Western Kilimanjaro, there are people that send us pictures of secretary birds there in that area. So we should enlarge.
Yes, we are trying.
So also our team, because we
Yes, we are. Yes.
to keep going. Yes. And another question is, one of the threats to secretary bird is illegal harvesting. This is done by tourists or communities, but we already answered, no, tourists are not allowed. Did any corporate social responsibility project to stop those harvesting? For what I know, there is no an entity that is willing to stop those harvesting. There is the patrolling service of the park.
Also because it's a very new things.
Yeah.
These things discovered Nature Tanzania in 2023 because we spoke a lot with Mr. Jimwa, and because we are in contact clearly, and so speaking so a man, but there is a problem. We found very strange things, camera trap broken, but not by elephant. When elephant broken camera trap, they destroy everything. Cable of the power.
Yes, the camera was simply turned. They stayed on the pole, they were turned, so it was facing the nest, it was just turned, and the cable
coupled with the light.
With the power, yes.
Yes, so we spoke with him, so, and they try to start to inform, to take information about this. And they told us, guys, Secretarybird is used by traditional medicine. And this is a new thing. It's not.
We must deepen. Maybe we can include some interviews with locals to deepen these aspects and evaluate how much is used, is only few or a lot.
Yes, also because the strange that the day before the chicks and the parent was alive. You arrive the day after passing the night, and you find these things. We have not the proof with the people with the hand on the chicks, but some things we strongly suppose that is illegal harvesting, because sometimes the sign is very strong. Like another time that we found under a tree, 2 days before we monitor it, and all okay, parents with the chick. We go 2 days after, and we found the nest empty, and under the trees we found
sugar cane remains and
a piece of paper, orange, local orange. Do you remember, Juma? Yeah, under the nest. So we strongly
because we
think
cannot
about this.
some people decided to rest under these very small trees.
Yes,
but
but it's very
there was another tree much bigger with a much more shadow.
300 meters.
Yes, so
the
if
nest.
you want to rest, you
And then 500 meters of road. So why?
the tracks of the
Why? Yes, it's a supposition. We have not proof. It's a hypothesis. We have not proof of nothing, but
clues of human disturbance we have. These are clues of human disturbance. Then for the harvesting, we don't have the proof. But
That sounds like some good proof.
All right. Do you have any questions from the floor? If not, then we really have to thank you guys so much for coming and also for doing such an amazing work. And we are looking forward to read more and to learn more from the research projects. And for our participants, if you have any questions, they will be here for another maybe 30 minutes. Just feel free to, to ask questions or just introduce yourself. Just anything. All right, let's give hands over closer to you. And thank you so much for our online participants for coming. And this ends the RISE seminar series for 2024. I hope I'll see you next year. Thank you so much.